Well, good evening, IFL Nation, and welcome. It is everybody's favorite time of the week. It is 10 a.m. or p.m., over on the East Coast, middle of the week, which means one thing, and it is once again Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League. I could not be more delighted to be back with you tonight. I appreciate you hopping on, taking some time out of your evening to discuss some IFL football. For those of you who are new to my channel or new to the Indoor Football League, welcome aboard. My name is Alex Schuberth. I am a big-time IFL football fan and an IFL contributor over for Sports Coast to Coast, which is a Pacific Northwest-based sports forum that specializes in the coverage of IFL football specifically. Whether you're looking for game previews, recaps, team-by-team breakdowns, rosters, the whole 9 yards, or in our case, 50, Sports Coast to Coast has all of your IFL fan needs. So definitely go check it out. I put the URL in the description. You can also find the written version of this segment on there as well. And with those introductions out of the way, let us dive in to week 4. So we've made it, everybody. We have survived the madness that was March. Now that the calendar turns over to the next month, all we can hope is that April showers us with even more entertainment than what the first 3 weeks of the season gave us. So I'm excited to see what the future holds here. So as always, we are going to be recapping week 3, which I don't know how, but we managed another 4-win week, our second consecutive winning week in a row. And that pushes our streak dating back to last year, where we have had a winning or even record on the slips in 15 of the last 16 regular season weeks. Extend that to 14 out of 16 weeks in which we have gotten a net gain. So very excited that our analysis has turned into some statistically significant results. And we're going to be going over some year-to-date season trends now that we've got 14 games under our belts. Decent enough sample size to start doing a little bit of number crunching, away with the data from last year and bringing in what has been in the offering for this year. And trying to project, obviously, what's to come, which is what we'll do once we debrief on week 3's action. Coming up this week, we've got 5 games. They are all on Saturday night. So, Kamish, if you happen to be listening to this, I think fans want Inside the IFL run back for a second straight year. All of the overlap is going to create a lot of chaos from a fan's perspective, figuring out which game to focus on at any given point in time. So to have everything all there in one stop, that would be massive from the fans' point of view. So little monologue there, but moving on, we'll take a look at the individual games. We'll also take a stab at another 3-leg parlay after ours from last week came up short on the first leg. Unfortunately, it was by the hook. And we will get to, as well, to wrap up, futures forecasts and trends to see which teams have increased or decreased their odds based on the first few weeks' supply. So I'm doing something a little bit different with my betting definitions segment this time around. I'm going to be looking to provide some sort of context to at least one, preferably 2, terms used often in the world of sports betting. One of which that I mentioned quite a bit, both in my post last week and in the live chat of several of the games, was the concept of handle, which is just simply saying how much money is placed on one side of the bet versus the other. So if you're using the DraftKings mobile app, every once in a while, you'll find some stats if you click into the game that shows how much of the money is going on teams on the money line, how much are going on the spread, and how much on the over-under. So, for example, prior to last week's game between Sioux Falls and my hometown Pirates, Sioux Falls had 82% of the money line handle. So that was a substantial win for the bookies, with only 18% of the public money backing Massachusetts straight up. So that's what handle is. And the second term here is juice. This is sometimes called commission or vigorish. But basically, it's the tax built into both sides of a bet. So, for example, if you're looking at a spread bet, both sides will be at minus 110. And what that does is if you have player A betting on the favorite for $11, and you have player B betting on the underdog for $11 on the spread, the house takes $22 in total, but they only pay out $21 to whichever side wins the bet. So regardless of the outcome, they're keeping $1. So that's what gives sports betting the distinct house advantage. Most books will default to a 10% juice, but sometimes that number rides up to 15%, depending on book, or perhaps for other sports if the game has gone live. Typically, then the juice will be up to 15, or worst case scenario, 20%. So it's a little bit more betting parlance for you. And now we get to recapping this week, which honestly, I don't know if I would have enough time to go over every single one of these to the extent that I wanted to, because every single game had such an amazing story to tell, both on the field and with respective slips. Because we had, I think, at least 3 different wagers that were decided by the hook. And I want to say it was 4 wagers that came down to basically the final play of the game. Look no further than Monday night's San Antonio-San Diego slugfest. My prediction is that game's going to hold as game of the year. But that last kickoff return attempt by San Antonio, where they were lateral in the ball, San Diego gets their hands on it, runs it in for a touchdown, and that absolutely smoked San Antonio bettors, who had a plus 2.5 point spread. They basically win that bet if San Antonio is tackled anywhere in the field of play in any capacity. That is just an absolutely sickening way to lose a bet. Fortunately for us, we had the over, so we were kicking back and relaxing by like 5 minutes left in the third quarter. Those missed extra points in the first half did not turn out to matter one bit. The only way that they really mattered was if you take 3 or even 4 of those extra points, make them good, we would have had the highest scoring game in the IFL in the past 2 years. Instead, it has to settle for tied for second with a game from a season ago. So our over bets were convincing winners. Jacksonville and Bay Area on Sunday. Oh my gosh, let me tell you guys, I was fully prepared to accept my fate with a 1-win, 4-loss record late Sunday night. In both of those games, Vegas had the ball up 13 late. Arizona had the ball in the tie game late. Miraculously, both of those teams fumble. Our sides each recover, and then they get the needed scores to take those bets to the promised land. A crazy backdoor cover by Jacksonville and a gritty win by Bay Area. Our plus odds money line bet came up a little bit short. A bit of a heartbreaker with Tucson in the lead late, but Northern Arizona getting the rushing touchdown with 11 seconds left to seal that one. And then we got backdoor covered by the Duke City Gladiators in the Frisco game, with the Gladiators scoring a touchdown, Ernesto Lacayo nailing 1 of 5 drop kick attempts, which wound up having that game end as a 49-40 final score. So in what has turned out to be a complete antithesis of a season ago, we have got a perfect start in the over-under department. We've selected 2 overs and 2 unders apiece correctly, which is really encouraging that we've got that essentially down pat. Our spread betting is a little bit more even. We've backed more favorites than underdogs to this point, but still overall winning there nonetheless. And Moneyline Magic just simply has not been there yet this season. We do have one win from an underdog, but it was San Diego over Duke City in week 2, a game where San Diego was only the underdog by 1.5 points. So you could really make the case that that was a pick 'em more than anything else. But we'll get to those underdog struggles on the money line in just a little bit. You can see our parlay down there. Got smoked at the first leg. Wouldn't have mattered because Vegas beat Jacksonville for the second leg. So 0 for 2 on the parlay so far. Hopefully this week will bring us a little bit more luck there. So as far as our yearly results to date, we've got both our flat and our weighted methods returning over 20% ROI. And you can see with the graph down below, we are convincing net gain each of the last 2 weeks, regardless of the method. The weighted method did really good this week, nailing bets of $13, $12, and $11. So that explains how it made up so much ground over the flat method, which again only puts $10 towards each game. And looking at some trends from week to week, looking at it from a full year's perspective, we are absolutely soaring. And it's going to be tough to retain that 20% ROI. I'm not sure if it's going to stay there the entire way. I would love for it to. But these are the results that we really want to be seeing in the beginning parts of the season. Bear in mind, last year, our first few weeks wound up with a record of 6 wins and 10 losses. So that required us to kind of dig out of an early hole, which luckily we were able to. But again, this is a really encouraging start, and I can't wait for more success down the road. All right, let's look at this from each of the bet types perspectives. So needless to say, the under is still in the distinct advantage, despite all 4 overs coming out of the 6 games in week 3. That wasn't to be wholly unexpected, seeing those point totals drop to as low as 75.5. We also had a 77.5 and a 79.5. All 3 of those games made the over convincingly by at least 2 touchdowns, I'm pretty sure. So we should expect odds makers to be able to correct that with this week and going forward. But like Commissioner Todd Tryon said in his Inside the IFL bit, which was just recently released, I can't really complain about scoring in the IFL right now because, as we said last week, that power potential for quick scoring is still alive and well. So looking at the spread, favorites are 8 and 6, courtesy of the San Diego fumble recovery for a touchdown late. That gave them the absolutely miraculous cover. I know some of you had San Diego minus 2.5. It wasn't looking encouraging at times, but got a little bit of luck and it pulled through. Notably, when the spread has been set at any double-digit margin, the underdogs are a perfect 3-0. Again, that shouldn't be too surprising because we've had only 2 out of the 14 games decided by double digits. And even at that, those 2 games topped off at 11-point margin of victories. So parity has been among the recurring themes in the IFL this season. It's definitely something that we have to take into consideration when making our bets going forward. And the road teams are an even 7-7 against the spread. Remember, those road teams against the spread last year were only winning at a 35% clip. So regression to the mean? Maybe. But right now, as it stands, home teams and road teams covering equally as much ground when lining up against the handicap. For the money line, and this was a stat that surprised me a little bit when I was looking into it throughout this week, favored teams have only lost twice straight up. We talked about one of those being the week 2 San Diego at Duke City game. And then the other one, which was the most surprising result in retrospect so far, the week 2 game with Vegas going into Phoenix, or more specifically Glendale, and taking down the Arizona Rattlers on that game-winning field goal attempt. So with that light, I did a little bit of number drilling. And if you put $10 on every favorite on the money line that was available on DraftKings, you'd be up 4.5 units right now, which would rank above my current rate of roughly 3 units for both flat method and weighted method. And continuing to look at straight up from the home and road perspective, the home team won all 6 games last week. That puts their advantage on the season to 10 wins and 4 losses. And I'm thinking either next week or the week after, we'll be able to look at which teams have been most successful on which types of bets. So that'll be something to look out for. Again, as we get more games played, some more data in there, and we can take a look at it then. So now I'll go into my usual disclaimers here. The lines and odds that we're going to take a look at are coming specifically from DraftKings Sportsbook. They put their lines a little bit later than usual this week. A little bit unsurprising because the last game was Monday night, so I think it was around 3 p.m. Eastern that they came out. Or actually 2 p.m. Eastern that they came out. But in any event, we're looking at DraftKings. Your state or jurisdiction might be using a different book, so this is going to be looking at DraftKings specifically. Again, we're doing this for fun. We're not doing this to make money. If you do try your luck and or tail my bets, please do so responsibly. Practice responsible gaming habits. Set a limit on time and budget. And if you or a loved one is having trouble with problem gaming, there's a lot of resources out there online that you can refer to for help on that subject. And with all of that having been said, it's time to dive in to week number 4 of 2024 of the Indoor War. We will start things off with this top game here. We've got the Northern Arizona Wranglers taking on the San Antonio Gunslingers, fresh off that doozy of a Monday nighter. Northern Arizona is laying 2.5. Over-under is set at 97.5. You can lay a quarter for the Wranglers on the money line, and San Antonio money line is paying plus a nickel. This is definitely a really interesting game. You could make a case of 2 of the hottest offenses battling it out at the Freeman Coliseum. This is the home opener for the San Antonio Gunslingers, as their fans will get a taste of their team in the IFL for the very first time, playing at home. The Wranglers came off an impressive win last week. They beat Tucson at Prescott Valley 54-48, and my gosh, RZ McCorker has been crazily impressive. Not only most explosive rookie this season, he's making a case for Offensive Player of the Year. 6 combined touchdowns, including 2 kickoff return touchdowns in the season opener against Arizona. Coach Les Moss may have found himself one of the most dangerous players that the league might have to offer this year. The only thing that he could have hope for him is nobody's in the UFL is watching, because he puts together some more games like this, people are going to notice. But for right now, McCorker gives Northern Arizona an insane weapon on the offensive side of the ball. Speaking of insane weapons, how about Sam Castronovo last week for the Gunslingers, combining for 8 total touchdowns, 4 through the air, 4 on the ground. Gunslingers have their own version of Slingin' Sammy, aka Castro. I'm expecting this game to be all sorts of entertaining from start to finish. And when I look at this, I think of 2 trends that are going to come and get into a direct clash with one another. We're looking at home teams being 10-4, but underdogs only being 2-12. But here, I'm going to take the plus odds money line magic and see if we can't squeak out a win here from San Antonio. This is Northern Arizona's first game on the road for the season. So again, it falls into that early season category of, can a team's level of play travel outside of their home arena? I'm not expecting Northern Arizona to fall flat, but they could be a notch or 2 below what we have seen from them in the past couple weeks. So for that reason, give me San Antonio for the upset special. Plus 105 is pretty good payout. I'd like to see it a little bit higher, but we'll take it at plus 105 anyways. Game 2, also a 7 o'clock Eastern time kickoff. This is the Arena/Indoor Football Super Cup. The Bay Area Panthers and the Jacksonville Sharks. This is the only matchup, at least that I know of, in the entire world of indoor football that's going to pit 2 defending champions against each other. Obviously, Bay Area taking the championship in Henderson last season against Sioux Falls. Jacksonville winning in the NAL championship by comeback win over the Carolina Cobras. Jacksonville laying 8 in the hook at home. Over under is set to 84.5. Bay Area minus 290 money line. Jacksonville plus 235 money line. So again, we've seen Jacksonville play a couple games. They've definitely struggled in their transition into the IFL a lot more than a lot of people thought. Some shady offensive line play has really put Connor Blunt, the quarterback, in a precarious spot, kind of running for his life, trying to make plays on the fly. But even though the eye test has been a little bit rough for the Sharks, their 2 losses, which were both road games, by the way, came by just 5 and 6 points to 2 teams that make strong cases for being top 5 in the league, in Massachusetts and the Vegas Nighthawks. So I definitely think that the confines of the VyStar Veterans Memorial Arena is going to help level the playing field significantly. This is a game that I do believe Bay Area winds up pulling out in the end. But you look at that point spread, you think back to how many games have been so close. I don't feel comfortable laying 8.5, let alone on a road team, even one that is as high caliber as Bay Area. So for a 3rd consecutive week, I'm actually backing the Jacksonville Sharks. And for the 2nd week in a row, I will take them on the points. 8.5 is a great number to get. We saw in last week's game the difference between plus 6.5 and plus 7.5 could have meant the difference between winning and losing the bet had Jacksonville's final PAT not been good. So getting this at plus 8.5 is significant. And honestly, it's doable. It's doable for the Sharks. They've proven it on a couple different instances already. 2-0 record against the spread. Granted, both of those were in fact by the hook. But this is set up really well for them to make that a 3-0 against the spread mark. So give me Jacksonville on the points in their IFL home debut. Now we look at our first of 3 8 o'clock Eastern Time kickoffs. The Tucson Sugar Skulls and the Duke City Gladiators. Two teams, each looking for their first win of the season. So we're going to be expecting the very best from both of these sides. Despite the loss last week, Tucson really impressed with Billy back in the fold as head coach. He's got a potential superstar at signal caller in Malik Mitchell, who, at least to me, drew a bunch of Drew Powell comparisons with the way that he made plays with his legs and his arm. He definitely was among the more impressive players in that game against the Wranglers, in a game that saw many impressive performances along the way. And for Duke City, they put in a respectable performance against Frisco, a game where they only had 3 days of rest and you had to account for travel. And they ended up getting that game to within a 9-point margin of defeat on the road in one of the toughest places to play in the Indoor Football League. It was definitely a redemption game for Javen Kilgo, who once again drew the start despite struggling in the San Diego season opener. And I'll be honest with you guys, this was the game that I found myself the most back and forth on, really with all 3 bet types. And what I ended up deciding on was Duke City at plus 4.5. I definitely see a scenario where this game is perhaps tied or within a point or two going into the final stretch of the game. And what's nice about plus 4.5 or plus 3.5 for that matter is if the game comes down to a game-winning field goal, and let's say Tucson gets it to win the game, we've got some immunity to that with the number of points that Duke City is being given in this case. So I like this as a nice little insurance policy. And it's definitely a game that Duke City can win. They definitely have had success throughout this season or throughout the all-time series against the Tucson Sugar Skulls. So that is my play here. I'm going to go Duke City Tucson. I'm going Duke City plus 4.5 and see if we can get another barn burner, as has been tradition in the IFL's 2024 season. Second game of the 8:05 window, Eastern Conference tussle between the Green Bay Blizzard and the Quad City Steamwheelers, one of the longest standing indoor football rivalries of all time, really. The teams are rivals going as far back as AF2, when Green Bay made its inaugural season in 2003. So these two teams have history. They're very familiar with one another. And it's another one of those matchups where one seems to elevate the play of the other in almost every instance. So Quad City's laying 6.5. Over under has been set to 85.5. Green Bay's paying plus 170 on the money line. Quad City is minus 205 on the money line. I really do like this matchup for a couple different reasons. Max Myler and Judd Erickson, the two respective quarterbacks for those teams, are definitely two of the higher end up and coming quarterbacks in the league. And both of them are going to be going up against defenses that so far have really shown out, each surrendering fewer than 40 points per game to date. And looking at it from that perspective, that could potentially lead to the under being a solid play. But if you read my written post, you kind of know where I'm getting with this. This is a game where I'm kind of deviating from what I normally do. I don't like doing standalone bets that lay significant amounts of money. But Quad City straight up does have its merits here. The first reason is that we've made mention of the record of favorites straight up so far. They are 12-2, and the first stretch of the IFL season has proven that there is money to be had betting on these favorites to win. We're not going to be able to do this on every single game, obviously, but there are specific set times where it makes the most sense. And to be honest, this value could be way worse. For example, in last week's Jacksonville-Vegas game, the line was also at 6.5, but if you wanted to side with Vegas, you were laying minus 235 or minus 240. And now we're laying significantly less. It's still really, really heavily juiced, but with how close these games have been, particularly those bitter rivalry games, how can you lay 6.5 on anybody at this point? And one of the reasons why I'm not exactly gravitating towards that Green Bay spread, couple reasons. First, this is their first game on the road on the season. And the second reason is that the home team has just dominated this series for the past 2-3 seasons since Quad City came back into the fold in 2022. The home team won all three last year. There's no reason to suggest that this version of the rivalry is going to be any different. So we're basically buying a touchdown for not as much juice as we're used to seeing. This does carry value, but not in the way that we've kind of defined it before. So Quad City money line is my play. I can assure you that that is not going to be happening very often where I select heavy favorites like this. But the landscape of the IFL, the way that it is right now, I have a hard time seeing a better option. Third and final game of the 8 o'clock window, Iowa against Tulsa. Tulsa getting a touchdown, or Iowa's getting the touchdown. Tulsa's laying it. The over-under is 77.5. Iowa's plus 215 money line. Tulsa minus 265 on the money line. And this, so far, even though we've only had a couple games in this series, it has been very interesting to watch. These are two scrappy teams that are going to be fighting for their first win of the season. And whoever gets this win, it might be a galvanizing moment in their season. It'll lead to a 1-1 record. You'll get that first win early, kind of get the monkey off your back a little bit in what is shaping up to be a really competitive Eastern Conference. So you win this game, you can try to build a little bit of momentum going forward. Tulsa's home opener. And for Iowa, this is their second game of the season and their second on the road. And last year, both games were won by the visiting team. But as tempting as Iowa plus 215 is to take here, I'm not even looking at money lines. I'm once again looking at this implied total and wondering, how can it be at this number? Both games last year easily eclipsed this total. We had 102 points in their first meeting, 88 points in their second meeting. And the offenses back then, in my opinion, don't carry anywhere near the level of refinement or upside as these 2024 squads do. Particularly with Iowa, getting DJ Peterson back at quarterback. He didn't play in either of those games last year against Tulsa, as he was recovering from the ACL injury that kept him out all of 2023. Again, I could see this game getting up to 90 points. The defenses can be a little bit loose for both these teams. And seeing as this is a rivalry game, they're going to want to set the tone early on, which could lead to some high early scoring. If we get a 28 or 28 point first quarter or something close to that, we're going to be in really great shape, as we saw in a couple instances last week. So aside from the Quad City pick being a higher weight, just simply because to offset some of the juice on that, this Iowa Tulsa pick is actually the one that I have the most confidence in. So give me Iowa Tulsa over 77.5 to wrap up the week of single game bets. Now the fun begins. We're going to cook up a 3-leg parlay here. Again, we're going to go with one type of bet each and see if we can string together a winner. So one bet I'm liking from Northern Arizona, San Antonio. It's a bit of a contrarian play, especially with what we saw last week, but I'm taking the under for this. 97.5 is a lot, and it's going to take quite the effort for really both teams to repeat those performances from a week ago. The defensive coordinators might want to kind of dial things into order. But again, last year, games at this number were only winning, or they were winning on the under roughly 70% of the time. So this serves as a pretty decent first leg based on what recent history has had to suggest. The second leg I'm going to be taking, a little bit of a punt play depending on how you take a look at it, but Tucson on the money line. On paper, I think Tucson again is the better team, but that doesn't mean that they're going to run away with it, which is the main reason why I selected Duke City plus 4.5. And there is a scenario where both of those bets can win. If Tucson's margin of victory is between 1 and 4, we'll have a winning leg on this parlay, as well as a winning slip from our single game bet. And the same logic goes for my third leg, which is Green Bay plus 6.5 on the spread. Again, we've just had so many one-score games this season where you kind of have to take a look at these underdogs a lot more closely, almost regardless of the matchup. We can't go too crazy with how we kind of come to that conclusion. But for right now, unless week 4 throws us an entirely wacky curveball, we've got to ride it out and hope that the trend continues. And with 3 weeks of kind of seeing the same thing play out over and over again, I do like our chances with this parlay. So it sits at plus 484 at the moment. So a $10 wager could turn into $58.40 if it hits. It would suddenly bring us to a convincing net positive on the weekly tracker. So we will have to see if those three pieces hold up on Saturday night. Here's to hoping. Finally, our look at the futures. Some pretty significant changes here. We have a new favorite to win the IFL Championship. It is the Frisco Fighters with plus 370 odds. After a 3-0 start, Massachusetts slides in second with plus 450. Arizona dropping to plus 600 to match Bay Area. San Diego and Vegas both moving hot up that chart following their respective 2-0 starts. San Diego is plus 800, Vegas plus 900. Jacksonville dropping quite a bit there with an 0-2 record. And one thing that really interested me is that the odds for Quad City have not changed since the beginning of the season. It has just stayed at plus 1100 the whole way through. They are the only IFL team that has not had a change in that payout potential. So yeah, as the league continues to take shape, futures market is always a good way to look at kind of how these teams are ranked in comparison to one another. And these are trends that we're going to be following a little bit more closely as the season progresses here. So with that having been said, we have covered all of our ground leading up to week 4 of the Indoor Football League season. I'll see you guys on Saturday. Have a great night, and I will see you at the cashier.